The email arrived at 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday, 3 days before Noah Hayes would have earned the largest bonus of his career. He stared at the subject line, "Immediate Termination Notice," while rain hammered against his office window on the 32nd floor of Meridian Financial Tower. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, untouched, as he'd been finalizing the quarterly report that would secure not just his $110,000 performance bonus, but vindicate 18 months of 16-hour days. Noah's hands didn't shake as he opened the email. They should have. Instead, they hovered over his keyboard with the steady precision that had made him Meridian's most valuable senior analyst. The message was brief, clinical, signed by Gerald Frost, the chief financial officer who had personally recruited Noah from a competitor 2 years prior, with promises of meritocracy and unlimited growth potential. Effective immediately, your employment with Meridian Financial Group is terminated due to restructuring needs. Your access credentials will be deactivated at 5 p.m. today. Please coordinate with HR for exit procedures. No explanation, no meeting, no phone call from Gerald, who Noah had mentored through 3 major acquisitions and whose daughter's college recommendation letter Noah had written on his own time. Just 15 lines of corporate boilerplate and a calendar invite for an exit interview scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9. Noah stood slowly, his chair rolling backward and hitting the glass wall behind him. His office, compact but coveted, with a view of the harbor, where container ships moved like sleeping giants, had been his sanctuary. The whiteboard still displayed his projections for the Hanover merger, color-coded and annotated with the kind of detail that had earned him the nickname The Prophet among junior analysts. His desk held 3 framed photos: his daughter Emma at her high school graduation, his late wife Sarah at their cabin in Vermont, and his mother in her nursing home garden, smiling despite the Alzheimer's that had begun erasing her memories 2 years ago. The timing was surgical. 3 days before bonus distribution. 3 days before the contract clause he'd negotiated, the one his lawyer friend Marcus had insisted on, the one Noah had fought for during his hiring negotiation, would have triggered an automatic vesting schedule that included not just his performance bonus, but 18 months of accelerated stock options worth another $340,000. He picked up his phone and dialed Marcus. It went to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. He opened his company email to forward the termination notice, but his access was already gone. It was only 5:52 p.m., 8 minutes early. His Slack showed offline. His access to the shared drives returned error messages. They'd moved faster than their own timeline. A knock on his glass door made him turn. Jennifer Park, his colleague from the Risk Assessment Division, stood in the hallway with 2 security guards. Her eyes were red, her usually immaculate blazer wrinkled. She'd been terminated too. "They're clearing the whole division," she said quietly, her voice tight. 12 of us, all before bonus week. Noah, they're taking everything. Gary tried to grab his personal files and they threatened to call the police. The security guards, Noah didn't recognize them, they must have been from an outside firm, stepped forward with banker's boxes. "Sir, we need to escort you out. You can take personal items only. No files, no electronics, no documents." Noah nodded slowly. He lifted the 3 picture frames, placed them carefully in the box. He grabbed his daughter's hand-drawn card from her childhood that said "World's Best Data Dad," and a small, smooth stone from the Vermont cabin where Sarah had told him she was pregnant. The guards watched his every movement. "My notes on the Caldwell project," Noah said calmly. "They're personal research, done on my own time over weekends. They're in my locked drawer." "No documents, sir." "They're mine, not company property. I can prove the timestamps." "Sir, we need to go now." Jennifer was already in the hallway, her box clutched against her chest, tears streaming down her face. She'd been 3 days from a $95,000 bonus. She had twin boys in private school and a mortgage that required her income. Noah had attended their birthday party last month, had helped her prepare for her performance review, and had vouched for her when the previous CFO had questioned her methods. The elevator ride down 32 floors was silent, except for the mechanical hum and Jennifer's suppressed sobs. Noah's mind was racing, but his exterior remained calm, a skill learned during his years as a Marine Corps intelligence analyst, before business school, before Sarah, before the life that had just been erased with a single email. In the lobby, other Terminated employees clustered in small groups, shell-shocked. Michael Torres, who'd just bought his first house. Sarah Chen, who'd relocated from Singapore 6 months earlier. David O'Coffer, whose wife was 7 months pregnant. All senior analysts. All 3 days from 6-figure bonuses, all part of the team that delivered Meridian's most profitable quarter in company history. Noah stepped into the rain without opening his umbrella, letting the cold water soak through his suit jacket. The box of personal items felt impossibly light. 18 months of his life reduced to 3 pictures and a stone.
His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Noah, it's Marcus. Don't use your regular phone or email. They're monitoring. Meet me at Prospect Coffee, the one on Ashland. 20 minutes. This is worse than you think." Noah sat in the back corner booth at Prospect Coffee, a deliberately shabby place that catered to graduate students and writers, where the espresso was bitter and the Wi-Fi was notoriously unreliable. Marcus had chosen it precisely because no one from Meridian's corporate culture would ever venture here. The rain had soaked through Noah's shirt, and he'd left the box of personal items in his car, unable to look at those 3 picture frames without feeling the weight of failure. Marcus arrived 15 minutes late, carrying a leather messenger bag that bulged with folders. He'd been Noah's roommate at Columbia Business School, had served as best man at Noah's wedding, and had held Noah upright at Sarah's funeral 3 years ago when lymphoma had taken her in 4 brutal months. He was a contracts attorney now, specializing in executive compensation disputes, and his face carried the expression Noah had learned to recognize: controlled fury masking deep concern. "They scheduled it perfectly," Marcus said without preamble, sliding into the booth and pulling out a manila folder. "Termination exactly 72 hours before your contract clause activates. Classic corporate timing. They avoid the bonus payout, they avoid the accelerated vesting, and they claim restructuring is justification to prevent wrongful termination claims." Noah wrapped his hands around a coffee cup that had gone cold. 12 of us, all senior analysts, all before bonus week. Jennifer Park is 3 days from $95,000. Michael Torres just bought a house based on his expected bonus. How is this legal? It's legal because your employment is at will, and they're claiming legitimate business restructuring. But Noah, Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I made some calls. Meridian isn't restructuring. They just hired 8 new analysts last week, junior level, fresh MBAs at 60% of your salary. This isn't about cutting costs. This is about cutting you specifically, right before a massive payout." The implication settled over Noah like a physical weight. Gerald knew. He's known for weeks. He's been planning this. "I think it's worse than that." Marcus pulled out a document, sliding it across the scarred wooden table. "Remember that clause you fought for during your hiring negotiation? The one that said if you were terminated within 90 days of a scheduled bonus distribution, you'd receive the full bonus plus accelerated stock vesting? They terminated me 72 hours before, 3 days outside the clause. Exactly. But here's what they didn't count on." Marcus's finger tapped a specific paragraph in the contract. "Read subsection 4.3b. The clause you negotiated includes specific language about termination timing that demonstrates clear intent to avoid compensation obligations. I wrote it deliberately vague because I wanted flexibility. If we can prove they timed your termination specifically to avoid the payout, the clause activates anyway." Noah read the paragraph 3 times. The language was dense, layered to the edge of comprehension, but the core was there. If Meridian terminated him in a pattern that demonstrated intentional avoidance of his contractual compensation, he was entitled to the full package regardless of the 72-hour window. How do we prove intent? We find out why they really terminated you. And we found out who made the call. Marcus pulled out another document. I already filed the demand for your personnel file and all communications related to your termination. They have 7 days to comply. But Noah, I need you to think carefully. In the last 6 months, did you uncover anything? Any irregularities in the reports? Any financial discrepancies? Anything that would make someone want you gone? Noah's mind scrolled back through 18 months of 80-hour weeks, the Hanover merger analysis, the Caldwell project restructuring, the quarterly projections that had predicted market movements with unsettling accuracy, the late nights in the office when he'd been alone except for the cleaning crew, and the distant glow of Gerald's office on the executive floor, always lit, always occupied. Then he remembered, 3 weeks ago, the Pemberton account. There was something, Noah said slowly. 3 weeks ago, Gerald asked me to run a valuation analysis on the Pemberton portfolio. It's one of our largest institutional clients, pension funds, municipal bonds, conservative long-term holdings. I ran the numbers and something was off. The projected returns Gerald had presented to the client were inflated. Not massively, but enough that over a 20-year horizon, we're talking about a 7-figure discrepancy. Gerald's expression sharpened. Did you tell Gerald? I sent him a detailed memo. I thought it was an honest miscalculation, maybe a modeling error. I offered to revise the presentation. He thanked me, said he'd handle it personally, told me to delete my analysis and not mention it to anyone else, said he didn't want to alarm the client over a minor projection adjustment. Do you have a copy of that memo? It was in my company email. They left me out before I could forward it.
Did you save it anywhere else? A personal email, cloud storage, printed copy? Noah shook his head, then stopped. Wait, I have a habit. Sarah used to tease me about it. Whenever I finish a major analysis, I email myself a summary. Just bullet points, usually, sent to my personal Gmail. It's how I keep track of my work for performance reviews. I might have sent myself notes about the Pemberton discrepancy. Marcus was already pulling out his laptop. Check now. We need that email. Noah pulled up his personal Gmail on his phone, scrolling back 3 weeks. There, dated September 8th, 2:47 a.m. Subject line, Pemberton valuation, flags for follow-up. A message to himself containing a 3-paragraph summary of the discrepancies he'd found, complete with the specific account numbers and the projected versus actual return calculations. I've got it, Noah said quietly. Everything. Account numbers, calculations, the 7-figure long-term discrepancy. Marcus read over Noah's shoulder, his jaw tightening with each line. Noah, this isn't a miscalculation. These numbers, if you're inflating returns to a pension fund client, that's securities fraud. And if Gerald told you to delete your analysis and stay quiet, that's consciousness of guilt. You didn't uncover a mistake, you uncovered a crime. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too exposed. Noah glanced at the other patrons, a cluster of college students arguing about philosophy, an elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner, a young woman typing furiously on a laptop. None of them looked threatening, but Noah couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. If this is what I think it is, Marcus continued, his voice barely above a whisper, Gerald didn't fire you to save $100,000 in bonus money. He fired you to silence you. And if he's willing to commit securities fraud with a major institutional client, he's not going to let you walk away quietly. Noah's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Park. Noah, did you see the company announcement? Gerald just sent out a memo. He's claiming our entire division was terminated due to performance deficiencies and failure to meet quality standards. He's destroying our reputations. We need to fight this. Another buzz. This time from David O'Cuffer. They're offering us severance packages. 6 weeks pay, but we have to sign NDAs and non-disparagement agreements. Michael already signed. I don't know what to do. My wife is pregnant, Noah. We need the money. Marcus saw the messages. Don't respond yet. Those NDAs are designed to silence you. Once you sign, you can't talk about what you found, you can't cooperate with investigations, and you can't challenge the termination. They're buying your silence for 6 weeks of salary. What do I do? You don't sign anything, and we go on offense. Tomorrow morning, you're scheduled for an exit interview with HR. You go. You record everything. Maryland is a one-party consent state. You ask specific questions about the termination reasoning, about the timing, about Gerald's involvement. You make them put their lies on record. Then, we file a wrongful termination suit, we submit your Pemberton memo to the SEC, and we force Meridian to produce every document related to your firing. Noah thought about Emma, his daughter, who was in her second year at Northwestern, studying environmental science. He thought about his mother in the nursing home, whose care cost $7,000 a month and who smiled at him now without recognition. He thought about Sarah, who had always told him to do the right thing even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. "If I blow the whistle on Gerald," Noah said slowly, "I'll be toxic in this industry. No financial firm will touch me. I'll be the analyst who destroyed his own CFO. Even if I'm right, even if I win, my career is over." Marcus met his eyes. "Your career is already over. Gerald made sure of that when he sent that company-wide memo calling you deficient. Your choice now is whether you go quietly and let them win, or whether you fight and maybe take down a fraud that's stealing from pension funds, from teachers and firefighters and people who trusted Meridian with their retirements." Noah picked up his phone and opened the email to himself, reading again the careful summary of the Pemberton discrepancies. 7 figures over 20 years. Money that should have been growing for people's futures, instead being skimmed or misrepresented or lost to inflated projections that would never materialize. "Set up the recording equipment," Noah said. "I'll go to the exit interview. And Marcus, start drafting the SEC complaint. We're going to need it." The Meridian HR conference room was aggressively neutral. Beige walls, a generic landscape painting, a table that could seat 8 but held only 3 chairs. Noah arrived at 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes early, wearing the same suit from yesterday that he'd hung to dry overnight. It still smelled faintly of rain. The recording device Marcus had given him, a pen that was actually a digital recorder, sat in his jacket pocket, already activated.
Catherine Westfield, Meridian's Director of Human Resources, arrived precisely at 9. She was in her mid-50s, with the kind of professional warmth that never quite reached her eyes. Behind her came someone Noah didn't recognize, a thin man in an expensive suit, carrying a leather portfolio, who introduced himself as Robert Chen, legal counsel for Meridian. "Mr. Hayes," Catherine began, settling into a chair with a tablet in front of her. "This exit interview is a standard procedure. We'll be reviewing your termination terms, discussing your severance package, and addressing any questions you might have. Mr. Chan is here to ensure all legal protocols are followed." "Why was I terminated?" Noah asked directly. "The email cited restructuring, but I know Meridian hired 8 new analysts last week." Catherine's expression didn't change. "The company periodically evaluates its structural needs and makes adjustments. Your position was eliminated as part of a broader divisional reorganization." "My entire team was terminated 3 days before bonus distribution. 12 senior analysts who delivered the most profitable quarter in company history. That's not reorganization. That's elimination." Robert Chen leaned forward. "Mr. Hayes, I need to remind you that disparaging the company or making unfounded accusations can impact your severance eligibility. Meridian is offering you a generous package: 6 weeks of salary, continued health insurance for 3 months, and a neutral employment reference. All we require is your signature on a standard separation agreement." He slid a document across the table. Noah didn't touch it. "What does the separation agreement require?" "Standard provisions," Chen said smoothly. "Non-disclosure, non-disparagement, a general release of claims against Meridian and its officers. It's entirely routine." "And if I don't sign?" "Then you receive no severance, no extended insurance, and no reference. And Mr. Hayes," Chen's voice took on a harder edge, "then we would be forced to document in detail the performance deficiencies that led to your termination. That documentation would become part of your permanent employment record, accessible to any future employer who conducts a background check." It was a threat.
delivered with corporate politeness. Sign away your rights, or we'll destroy your reputation in writing. Noah looked at Catherine. Did Gerald Frost personally authorize my termination? She hesitated for half a second. Termination decisions at your level require CFO approval, yes. So Gerald specifically approved firing me and 11 other senior analysts exactly 72 hours before our bonus vesting date? Mr. Hayes, Chen interrupted, the timing of your termination is not relevant to, it's extremely relevant. My contract includes a clause that activates if I'm terminated in a pattern designed to avoid compensation obligations. 72 hours before a $100,000 bonus after 18 months of exceeding every performance metric looks exactly like that pattern. Chen and Catherine exchanged glances. Noah saw something pass between them, not surprise but acknowledgement. They had expected him to mention the clause. Your contract clause has a 90-day window, Chen said. You were terminated 73 hours before bonus distribution. The clause doesn't apply. That's not what subsection 4.3.b says. It says termination timing that demonstrates clear intent to avoid compensation activates the clause regardless of the specific window. And I have emails proving I exceeded every performance benchmark. I have an analysis showing I predicted market movements that saved Meridian millions. I have documentation that I was working on the Pemberton account 3 weeks ago, and immediately after I submitted findings, Gerald told me to delete my analysis. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Catherine's professional mask slipped just for a moment, revealing genuine alarm. Chen's hand tightened on his pen. The Pemberton account is not relevant to your termination, Chen said carefully, and any work you did on that account is proprietary Meridian property covered by your employment agreement. If you have retained any documents or communications related to client accounts, you're required to return them immediately. I retained a summary I sent to my personal email. It's my own work product, not company data. And it shows a 7-figure discrepancy in projected returns that Gerald asked me to delete rather than correct. Catherine stood up abruptly. Mr. Hayes, this meeting has concluded. We'll give you 24 hours to review the separation agreement. I strongly encourage you to sign it. If you choose not to, we'll be forced to proceed with formal documentation of the performance issues that led to your termination. What performance issues? Noah remained seated. Specifically, give me one example of deficient work. Chen stood up as well. Mr. Hayes, you're no longer a Meridian employee. This meeting is over. You need to leave the building now.
Noah rose slowly, leaving the separation agreement unsigned on the table. I'll have my attorney contact you, and Catherine, you might want to ask Gerald about the Pemberton projections before you put anything in writing about my performance. Because when this comes out, and it will come out, you don't want to be on record lying to protect fraud. He walked out before they could respond, his hand steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. The recording pen had captured everything. In the elevator, Noah's phone rang. Marcus. How did it go? They threatened me, offered 6 weeks severance in exchange for an NDA and full release. When I mentioned the Pemberton account, they shut down the meeting immediately. Good. That's consciousness of guilt. Did you get it recorded? Every word. Perfect. Noah, I filed the SEC complaint this morning. Anonymous for now, but I included your Pemberton summary and a timeline of your termination. They'll open an investigation within 72 hours. In the meantime, I'm filing a wrongful termination suit in circuit court. We're arguing the contract clause, the timing, and retaliation for whistleblowing. Noah stepped out into the September morning. Across the street from Meridian Tower, he saw Jennifer Park standing with Michael Torres and 3 other terminated analysts. They were holding their unsigned separation agreements, looking lost. Marcus,
Can you represent all 12 of us, the entire team they fired? Class action wrongful termination? Yeah, I can do that. But Noah, it's going to get ugly. Meridian will fight hard. They'll try to divide you, buy off witnesses, dig into everyone's background looking for leverage. Are you ready for that? Noah thought about the Pemberton account, about pension funds being defrauded, about Gerald sitting in his office orchestrating terminations like chess moves. He thought about Sarah, who'd worked as a public defender because she believed in fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Set it up, Noah said. All 12 of us. And Marcus, let's make sure the SEC knows that Gerald didn't just cook projections. He systematically silenced everyone who could have discovered it. The SEC investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 5 days of Marcus's anonymous complaint, federal investigators contacted Noah directly, requesting an interview. They met in a bland federal building downtown, in a conference room that smelled of stale coffee and photocopier toner. The lead investigator was a woman named Patricia Morrison, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and the methodical patience of someone who'd spent 20 years unraveling financial crimes. She listened to Noah's entire account without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When she finished, she asked one question. Do you have any evidence that other Meridian analysts discovered similar discrepancies? Noah hadn't thought about that. But as soon as she asked, pieces clicked into place. Jennifer Park worked on the Caldwell restructuring. Michael Torres handled the Hanover merger analysis. We were all working on major accounts, all doing deep valuations. If Gerald was inflating projections on Pemberton, he might have done it elsewhere. Patricia made a note. We'll need to interview your former colleagues. Can you provide contact information? Noah called Jennifer that afternoon. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight. Noah, Michael signed the separation agreement. So did Sarah Chen and 2 others. They needed the money. They couldn't risk losing the severance. We're down to 7 who haven't signed. Jennifer, did you ever find anything irregular in the Caldwell numbers? Anything that didn't quite add up? A long pause. How did you know? Tell me. 6 weeks ago, I was running final projections for the Caldwell pension fund restructuring. The growth models Gerald gave me assumed an 8% annual return. But when I ran the actual portfolio analysis based on their investment mix, I got 6.2%. I flagged it in my report. Gerald told me I'd made an error in my risk calculations, that I needed to revise my models to match his projections. I pushed back. He said if I couldn't deliver accurate work, he'd find someone who could. Did you document that conversation? I saved my original analysis. It's on my personal laptop. Noah, what's going on? Noah told her about the SEC investigation, about the Pemberton account, about the pattern emerging. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. He's been doing this for how long? I don't know, but Patricia Morrison from the SEC wants to interview everyone who was terminated. If you have that Caldwell analysis, she needs to see it. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Within 48 hours, 5 of the 7 remaining analysts had provided statements to the SEC. Each had a similar story. Discrepancies discovered, concerns raised, instructions to revise or delete. David Okafor had found irregularities in municipal bond projections. Sarah Chen had flagged suspicious derivative valuations. Each time, Gerald had shut down the inquiry, claiming modeling errors or misunderstandings. The pattern was undeniable. Gerald Frost had been systematically inflating projected returns across multiple major accounts, and anyone who discovered it was silenced, first with instructions to revise their work, then with termination. The SEC moved to formal enforcement action. On October 15th, 3 weeks after Noah's termination, federal investigators arrived at Meridian's headquarters with subpoenas. They seized servers, froze accounts, and spent 12 hours in Gerald's office examining documents. The Meridian board called an emergency meeting. Gerald resigned at 6 p.m. that evening. The announcement came via press release. Gerald Frost has resigned as Chief Financial Officer of Meridian Financial Group to pursue other opportunities. The board thanks him for his years of service and wishes him well in his future endeavors. No mention of the SEC investigation, no acknowledgement of fraud, just corporate boilerplate and a quiet exit. But the SEC wasn't done. 2 days after Gerald's resignation, Patricia Morrison called Noah. "We found something," she said. Gerald wasn't just inflating projections. He was taking kickbacks from investment managers in exchange for steering client funds into high-fee products that underperformed. The inflated projections were designed to hide the underperformance. We're talking about 18 different institutional clients over 4 years. The estimated damage is somewhere north of $40 million. Noah sat down slowly. $40 million. And that's conservative. Some of these pension funds won't fully understand the impact for another decade. Your Pemberton analysis, that was the thread that unraveled everything. If you hadn't flagged those discrepancies, if you just signed the NDA and walked away, this would have continued for years. The wrongful termination lawsuit accelerated after Gerald's resignation. Meridian's board, desperate to contain the PR disaster, reached out to Marcus with a settlement offer. They would pay full bonuses to all 12 terminated analysts, provide accelerated stock vesting, extend health insurance for 2 years, and issue public statements acknowledging that the terminations were not performance-related. In exchange, they wanted the lawsuit dismissed with prejudice. Marcus brought the offer to Noah at his apartment on a rainy October evening. He'd been living off savings for 5 weeks, sending out resumes that went nowhere because Meridian's reputation for ruthlessly destroying whistleblowers preceded him. Emma had offered to take a semester off from Northwestern to help with expenses. He'd told her absolutely not. "It's a good offer," Marcus said, spreading the settlement terms across Noah's kitchen table. "Better than good. With the bonus and the stock vesting, you're looking at close to $500,000. The other analysts are ready to accept. Jennifer, David, all of them. They need this, Noah." What about Gerald? What about the $40 million he stole? The SEC is pursuing criminal charges. That's separate. This settlement is about your wrongful termination. You'd be making everyone whole, you and the 11 analysts who lost their jobs because of Gerald's fraud. Noah read through the settlement terms. Everything was there, everything they'd fought for. But something gnawed at him. What about the clause? The contract provision that says if they time my termination to avoid compensation, the protections activate. Marcus smiled slowly. That's the best part. By offering this settlement, Meridian is tacitly admitting they violated your contract clause. They're paying everything you would have gotten if they'd never fired you. It's an acknowledgement without an admission. And Noah, every analyst in the industry is going to hear about this, about how you fought and won, about how the contract clause you negotiated changed everything. Noah thought about the 12 analysts who lost their jobs, about Jennifer's twin boys and David's pregnant wife and Michael's new mortgage. He thought about the Pemberton pension fund and the teachers whose retirements Gerald had endangered. He thought about Sarah, who would have told him that sometimes winning means everyone gets made whole, not just you. "I'll sign," Noah said, "but I want one more thing. I want Meridian to establish a whistleblower protection fund, something that pays legal fees for any employee who reports financial irregularities and faces retaliation. I want it funded with $5 million, administered independently, and I want it named after Sarah." Marcus raised an eyebrow. The Sarah Hayes Whistleblower Protection Fund. That's not a small ask. Gerald stole $40 million. $5 million to protect future whistleblowers seems reasonable. And if Meridian refuses, we go to trial. and I testify about everything. Every kickback, every inflated projection, every instruction to delete evidence. I'll make sure this story is front-page news for months." Marcus made the call that night. The Meridian board agreed within 3 hours. The settlement checks arrived on November 3rd, electronically deposited into accounts that had been running dangerously low. Noah's deposit was $487,000 after taxes and legal fees. Not the full $450,000 he'd been owed, but close enough that the difference felt like a rounding error compared to the principal established. Noah Hayes' decision to fight his wrongful termination for exposing CFO Gerald Frost's securities fraud transforms lives far beyond his own. Jennifer Park, crying with relief, tells him she can keep her sons in school and save her home. David Okafor sends a photo of his newborn daughter, thanking Noah for fighting when others couldn't. 3 weeks later, the SEC announces formal charges against Gerald Frost: 12 counts of securities fraud, 8 counts of wire fraud, and 6 counts of obstruction of justice. The indictment details the kickback scheme, inflated projections, and systematic silencing of analysts who discovered discrepancies. Gerald posts his $5 million bail immediately, but the damage to Meridian is catastrophic. The company's stock plummeted 18% in 2 days. 3 board members resign. A new CFO from outside the company announces comprehensive audits and whistleblower protections exceeding even Noah's negotiated terms. In December, the Sarah Hayes Whistleblower Protection Fund launched with an independent board, including a former SEC commissioner, a Columbia law professor, and Jennifer Park as its first administrator. At the fund's reception, Jennifer declares her mission: ensuring no one must choose between their livelihood and doing the right thing. Noah stands uncomfortably at the back with his daughter Emma, home from Northwestern. Emma whispers that her mother would be proud, not just of the fund, but of Noah for fighting. He remembers Sarah's deathbed words about teaching Emma that principle matters more than comfort. Marcus finds Noah after the reception, noting his $500,000 settlement, multiple job offers, and reputation for integrity. Noah announces his plan to become an independent consultant, helping pension funds and institutional investors verify projections and prevent fraud. Marcus warns he'll earn a fraction of his Meridian salary. Noah accepts this readily. Emma's tuition is covered, his mother's care is paid for, and he doesn't need millions, just honest numbers. Gerald Frost's trial begins in April 2026, 18 months after the initial charges. Noah testifies for 7 hours over 2 days, presenting the Pemberton analysis, inflated projections, and evidence destruction. The defense portrays him as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, but the numbers, 11 other analysts, forensic accountants, and defrauded clients tell the truth. The verdict comes on a Thursday. Guilty on all counts. Gerald faces up to 20 years in federal prison. Emma graduates from Northwestern that May with honors in environmental science and a nonprofit job focused on sustainable investment. She wants to work where numbers help people, like her father does now. Noah's consulting practice grows slowly but steadily, with 12 institutional clients, pension funds and municipal investment boards, valuing verification over growth promises. He earns 60% of his former salary, but works from home, sets his own hours, and sleeps without ethical compromise. In September 2026, Gerald receives 15 years in federal prison and must pay $43 million in restitution. He shows no emotion as his attorney files appeal paperwork. Noah watches from the gallery.
With Jennifer Park and 3 other former Meridian analysts, Jennifer acknowledges 15 years isn't enough, but it's something. David Okafor, holding his 18-month-old daughter, notes it sends a message to every CFO considering fraud and every analyst discovering discrepancies. The Sarah Hayes Fund supports 11 cases in its first year, paying over $800,000 in legal fees, with 8 cases resolved favorably for whistleblowers. By fall 2029, Noah speaks at Columbia Business School's Ethics Symposium, convinced by Emma that students need to hear the real story, where doing right costs your job, reputation, and 18 months of stress, but you do it anyway because the alternative is worse.
Noah tells 200 students about the 4:47 p.m. email that ended his career, the choice between signing an NDA or fighting, and realizing Gerald had committed a crime. He warns them they'll face similar choices and must build protections before needing them. Negotiate contract clauses, document everything, cultivate relationships with ethical people, save money, and remember that integrity's reputation outweighs any job. A young woman approaches him after the lecture. She's found inflated numbers at her investment firm, but fears losing her first real job. Noah connects her with the Sarah Hayes Fund, assuring her she doesn't have to face this alone. By 2032, 7 years after his termination, Noah's life had found its rhythm. His consulting practice is small but respected. Emma has married an engineer and is expecting Noah's first grandchild. His mother passed away peacefully 2 years earlier, her final years funded by settlement money. The Sarah Hayes Fund has grown into a national organization with a $12 million endowment, 8 staff members, including 2 full-time lawyers, and 47 cases handled, with the success rate making corporate legal departments nervous. Gerald serves 9 years before parole release, emerging diminished and destroyed. Noah feels nothing reading about it, just distant acknowledgement that justice was served, however imperfectly. In November 2035, 10 years after the termination email, Noah received a message from an unknown Meridian analyst who found discrepancies in client projections and reported them because of what Noah built. A new VP inflating numbers like Gerald was terminated. The analyst thanks Noah for proving it's possible to fight and survive. Noah forwards the message to Emma with a note about her mother's pride. He sits in his home office looking at 3 surviving picture frames and reflects on integrity's cost: the lost bonus, sacrificed career, and 18 months of uncertainty. But he also considers the 47 protected whistleblowers, millions in stopped fraud, taught students, and the analyst who just had courage to speak up. Emma texts about dinner tomorrow. She wants Noah to feel the baby kick. They're having a girl and want to name her Sarah. Noah's vision blurs as he types, his honored acceptance. He returns to his valuation analysis for an Ohio teacher's pension fund. Quiet, unglamorous work that will never make headlines, but it's honest work, and that's the only kind worth doing. As the first snow falls, Noah realizes this isn't a perfect ending, but it's a true one, and for him, that had always been the only kind worth having. Senior financial analyst Noah Hayes is fired 3 days before earning his $450,000 bonus, 72 hours strategically timed to avoid his contract's protection clause. But the real reason for his termination runs deeper. He discovered CFO Gerald Frost inflating investment projections and stealing kickbacks, defrauding pension funds of over $40 million. Faced with signing an NDA for minimal severance or exposing the fraud, Noah chooses to fight. His whistleblowing triggers an SEC investigation, criminal charges against Frost, and a wrongful termination lawsuit. Though his finance career ends, Noah's courage leads to justice, restitution for victims, and the creation of a whistleblower protection fund honoring his late wife's legacy.